Hello, all you lovely people out there. I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Today we're going to check out a few shorter videos that all contain supposed proofs of God's existence and put them through the ringer of just the mildest scrutiny to see if they make any kind of logical sense. So first up, we're going to the channel of Patrick JMT to look at a mathematical proof for God. So take it away, Patrick.
Okay, so this guy Guido, he thought that he had a little, I don't know that necessarily he even proved it or came up with it, but he thought that this justified the existence of God. So, as he said, something had been created from nothing, but I think he was a bit incorrect in his approach.
So I want to point this out right off the bat. This argument belongs to Guido Ubaldus, and Patrick here is not arguing for this argument, he's just showing it to us. And Patrick himself says that the math is wrong, so that being said, let's look at Guido's mathematical approach to proving God.
Alright, well, 0 equals 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus whatever. Well, we can rewrite the zeros as 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1.
Except that now you've made a fundamentally different calculation. The fact that the answer comes out the same does not mean that it's the same problem. 5 times 5 is 25, and 100 minus 75 is 25. That doesn't mean that the two are basically the same problem just because the answer's the same. But if you're just looking at the outcome of the problem and how you get there doesn't matter, then I suppose it doesn't matter for the sake of the argument, since the answer is the same.
Well, then let's get rid of the parentheses. Well, let's regroup the parentheses. Let's just kind of shift them over a little bit. Well, now we have 1 plus negative 1 plus 1 plus negative 1 plus 1, etc. And now what we have is, well, 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, and hey, that's going to give us 1. So, well, probably figured out the gist by now. What he has shown is, ta-da, 0 equals 1.
Except that now you've critically changed the entire formulation. Why did you shift over the parentheses? You can't just move parentheses around within an equation, fundamentally changing the equation, and ultimately the outcome, and then claim it to be the same as the original formula. Once you start moving the mathematical symbols around, you're changing the entire problem, and ultimately changing the outcome. Look, 51 equals 1 times parentheses 51 times 1. Then I just shift over the parentheses a little, and now it's 15 equals 15 parentheses 1 times 1. So now I've just proven that 51 equals 15.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Also, you could do the same formulation with any number. When you turn the zeros into ones, that was a completely arbitrary number substitution. The same could be done with any number, and then with the parentheses shift, you end up with 0 equaling that number. Shove 42 into that exact same alteration of the formula, and now I've mathematically proven that 0 equals 42.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
Also, it should be pointed out that if you maintain the parentheses shift throughout the entire formula, you'd end up with a leftover -1 all on its own outside of a parentheses. So you'd still end up with 1 minus 1, meaning you'd still end up with 0 as the answer. So the entire math here is wrong. The alteration of the formula, the arbitrary number substitution, and the missing -1 still resulting in the answer being 0 all blow this proof for God out of the water. But thanks, Patrick, for bringing that thoroughly incorrect attempt at mathing God into existence to our attention. So now let's move on to another number-related attempt at proving God. This time coming from a channel called St. Mises. So what have you got for us, Mises?
Tell me something God did in your life personally to prove he exists. When I was 18, I kept seeing the number 1134 over and over for months. And I realized the number 1134 is hell when you flip it upside down.
Oh, you know, the brain has no nerve endings in it, so it's impossible for the brain itself to feel pain. But I think you might have just done the impossible because that just gave me the brain pains.
Ow! It's the brain pain, Coach.
Look, 4s are not upside down H's, 3s are not upside down E's, and 1s are not upside down L's. You're relying on our broken shorthand way of writing numbers to make this happen. A 4, properly written, cannot possibly look like an upside-down H. Turn it upside down and it looks like, well, nothing at all. Just a few randomly converging lines. And 1s are even worse. A properly written 1 is not just a straight vertical line. It has an angled point at the top and a baseline at the bottom. Turned upside down, well, it looks more like a capital T with a kickstand, or a capital T with, well, kind of looks like a capital T who's really, really happy to see us. I mean, this is so 5th grade. We all played these games back in grade school, playing around with calculators and then turning them upside down to make words. That doesn't mean that they were messages from God. What would your life be like if you constantly went around with this kind of mentality? What's that, God? What are you trying to tell me? You want me to put on my shoes? Oh, it must be a divine quest. God's chosen me to embark on a holy journey. Where is it you want me to go, O Lord? What's that? Oh, really? You want me to go find some of those, huh? Well, who am I to argue with the Lord? Anything else, God, before I go? What? Hey, where do you get off calling me that? I thought we were boys, G. Mises, seriously, this is barely even pareidolia. At least when you look at a cloud and see an animal, it makes some sense. It may actually be in the shape of that animal. But seeing improperly written numbers as letters when turned upside down is childish and silly in the extreme. Numbers aren't letters. They are completely different symbols created to symbolize totally different concepts. One does not substitute one for another because of a passing resemblance. So, there's St. Mises. Lastly, we're going to go to an argument from Pastor Glenn Barrett. Now, I don't know if he is the progenitor of this argument, as I've heard it many, many times before, but he is certainly a bombastic proponent of this argument, so let's hear him out and see what he's got in store for us.
And I drew a circle on a whiteboard like this. I said, this circle represents knowledge. Everything that could ever be known about any subject fits in there. All the sciences, all the arts. You're an intelligent man. You study at this university. How much do you know of everything that could possibly be known?
No single individual has anything but a tiny fraction of all the knowledge that there is. Collectively, however, we humans have access to, well, all of the knowledge. Because knowledge requires a thinking agent to hold it. Knowledge is defined as facts, information, and skills acquired by a being through experience or education. It requires there being a being. While there's certainly much, much more information that we can turn into knowledge, unless there are other thinking beings in existence with more knowledge than we have, and we have no evidence that there are, we humans have access to basically all the knowledge that there currently is. But he did say everything that could possibly be known. But still, it's a question of individual knowledge versus collective knowledge, and that's a problem right from the start.
So he took a pen and he drew that and he went, I reckon I know this much. I said, wow, you're intelligent. He said, yeah, I am. I said, that's brilliant.
This little story of his debate with an atheist who's all haughty and preachy and full of himself, why do I just somehow doubt that it went down this way? If, of course, it happened at all. But he would never lie or misrepresent the story, right? I mean, that would be bearing false witness. Violates the 9th commandment. No Christian would ever do such a thing.
I said, so that's what you do know? He said, yes. I said, and that's what you don't know? He said, yes. But this does exist, you just haven't discovered it yet. Yes. Therefore, could God not exist in a dimension that you haven't yet discovered?
Why are you the way that you are?
That proves nothing. That's not even an attempt to prove God. That doesn't even hint vaguely at the kinda, sorta, maybe, perhaps, somewhat notion of God. This is exactly the argument that you just made. Do you know everything? No. Ha ha, God exists, I just proved it. No, you haven't. You haven't even proven the possibility of God's existence, which was all that you were even capable of arguing for with this line of reasoning. You haven't demonstrated the possibility of a mind existing without a physical brain to contain it. You haven't demonstrated the possibility of something existing outside of time and space. You haven't then demonstrated the possibility of a thing existing outside of time and space, interacting with things within time and space. You haven't demonstrated the possibility of a logically self-contradicting God concept existing at all. You haven't demonstrated anything. Not to mention that the lack of not knowing conclusively that something doesn't exist is no good reason to believe that it does. Glenn, what portion of that circle do you know? Just a fraction? Okay, then isn't it possible that in the rest of that circle of knowledge, there exist space vampires who used advanced technology to create our whole planet and are just waiting on us to reach a population density high enough for them to come back and feed on us all in one big massive blood frenzy? You don't know it to not be true, so by your logic, I just proved it. All hail the space vampires! Alright, so that's going to do it for this compilation of God proofs. It just goes to show you that with a little bit of critical examination, obviously silly attempts at proving the divine like these can be easily seen for the shoddy arguments that they are. Do better than this, theists. You need to do much, much better than this. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Until next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.